Hi there. Today we will be talking about strategy and business-to-business marketing. Let's jump in. So, what is business-to-business marketing? Business-to-business marketing is any marketing strategy or content that's geared towards a business. So, we talked about marketing strategy in the past, how it's communication, creation, delivery, all of those different things can go into the marketing strategy aspect. But previously, we've mainly been focused on marketing towards consumers, those exchanges that businesses have with consumers, and that's pretty much what we're very familiar with because we are consumers, right? We go to the grocery store, we go to different shops, we go to restaurants, and we're involved in that marketing aspect. So we're very, very familiar with B2C marketing, business to consumer. However, B2B marketing may be less familiar because we don't interact with that on an everyday basis. And you may have never worked for a business that markets or has exchanges directly with another business. But in most cases, that occurs for many businesses, and that's because they often have to utilize products or services from another business just to keep their business going because a business cannot operate just in and of itself, right? Today we have to outsource technology, we have to outsource even like Microsoft Office products. We outsource a lot of the things that we use on an everyday basis to other companies to make it easier for us to do business and operate efficiently. So with business-to-business marketing, this is any business that sells products or services to other businesses, and they typically use B2B marketing. So with this, they have to target the needs, interests, and challenges of individuals that are making the purchases on behalf of or for their business. And that's why it's making the business itself the customer. So oftentimes we can think of this as there's some type of purchasing agent or buying agent within the firm that is working on making this purchase. However, they're making that purchase on behalf of a business oftentimes. So it's going to affect the whole organization. So you can think of, okay, like if Texas Tech University wanted to offer, let's say, Adobe products to all students at the university. Well, that is a business decision and it could be costly. So with this, even though maybe one or two individuals within Texas Tech University are making that decision, because it affects everyone within Texas Tech University, then it becomes a full-on business decision, and the business is then the customer. So we have some different companies that we should be familiar with or starting to familiarize ourselves with. One, GE, they're a big B2B company, General Electric. We've talked about them before as they came up with the marketing concept in the 1950s. In General Electric, they have many different subsidiaries underneath them that they work with different businesses. One is that they manufacture airplane engines for a lot of these airplane manufacturing companies, like Boeing. We also have Hootsuite, which they sell their software as a service to other businesses. And Hootsuite is very beneficial in the digital marketing realm because it allows firms to be able to post on multiple social media channels all at once. So you can see how that would be beneficial to a business, and they sell their services to nonprofits, for-profit businesses alike. So they're really popular. Mailchimp is also another company that is a software as a service. They allow you to automate emails, and that can be both beneficial to nonprofit and for-profits. I encourage you to look them up because they're really handy, especially if you, for the free version, you can have less than 2,000 email accounts and work with that very easily. So even if you are interested in starting your own business or you have started your own business, Mailchimp is really nice if you've started to collect email addresses to work with that. We also have Qualtrics, which you should be pretty familiar with now because I've asked you to complete the information sheet for this class, and so Qualtrics allows other companies to conduct marketing research. It also allows like academic universities to be able to conduct research also. You can conduct survey research, qualitative research, experiments, lots of different things that you can do with Qualtrics, so that's really nice. And we also have WeWork, is another company that you may have heard of or you're familiar with. We also have Slack. Slack is pretty common in the workplace, that allows messaging between teams and allows kind of like the organization between those teams to be cohesively integrated. We also have Microsoft Teams, that is kind of like a competing product that they're trying to compete against Slack in the marketplace. And then finally we have Salesforce, which you should all be pretty well familiar with. They market to other businesses to get them to automate a lot of their processes behind the scenes for e-commerce and many other aspects of business. So these are just a few companies that are really big names in the B2B space. We also have general categories of organizational buyers, and these are those who are buying from other businesses, and these are organizational buyers because they represent larger groups, not just one single individual. So one is that they're producers, and producers you can think of like any type of restaurant, anybody who manufactures a product. Oftentimes they need the raw material, right? A bakery doesn't necessarily have the ability to produce the flour, produce the sugar, produce the butter. They don't have all those products that they have a farm that they're able to produce all of those things and manufacture it and then use it in their business. But these producers, oftentimes they're sourcing products from a wholesaler, and that wholesaler is getting their products from even like a farmer or manufacturer who makes those things. So producers are big buyers of organizations because we see this all the time, especially with restaurants, because like I said, most of them cannot sustain themselves. If they didn't have a wholesaler to purchase products from, they wouldn't be able to stay in business, because those wholesalers perform a very efficient but much needed role for these producers. We also have intermediaries. So intermediaries, as I was just alluding to, is they buy from a manufacturer. One here is Cisco, and this is also related to food. Cisco is one of the largest food wholesalers in the country, and they work with these producers to be able to get the product to them. They operate nationwide, and with that they're able to get the products from manufacturers that producers need and sell those products to them and make the whole process very efficient. So with this, oftentimes these intermediaries, they are always looking for new products to add to their product line, but for that, obviously it's nice to have new products, but it also costs the manufacturer to start with that wholesaler, because they have to have some type of skin in the game. You know, if it was that easy to get in with a wholesaler and make your products that available to producers, then everybody would be doing it. So it's really this working relationship between businesses that makes it very nice. And then we also have government agencies. Government agencies are a huge buyer of products from other businesses. And the thing is, if you wanted to go online to see what type of contracts are available from government agencies, they have so many requests for proposals from businesses because the government needs products and services, just like other businesses need products and services. But internally, the government cannot complete all of those operations or cannot provide all of those themselves. So what they have to do is they have to outsource most of their activities, their services, their products and things that they have to purchase. They have to outsource that to another service provider or another company. And so oftentimes they have to make a request for proposal and solicit requests from multiple vendors, and then they decide on a contract. Now, with these contracts, like I've had a government contract before with my business, and you are in a competition. So you have to be mindful that there are others who are potentially bidding on the same contract that you are, and they usually choose those that are the lowest cost. They understand that everything within the government you have to realize is part of a budget, and so they're oftentimes choosing those with the lowest cost because they have budgetary requirements that they have to be concerned about. And the last one is other institutions. Other institutions is a really broad category to encompass hospitals, universities, schools. We have obviously higher education, and then we have secondary and primary education. And so all of these schools, you can think of, okay, just in the town that you lived in, you may have only had one high school, but there's may have been several elementaries, there may have been several middle schools, and even so, you may have had several universities within your hometown. Well, even in my hometown, we have about 40,000 people where I grew up. We had at least 7 to 9 elementary schools. We had 3 middle schools. We had a freshman school and a high school. So all of those schools have to source their products from somewhere, and sometimes they have to also source services from somewhere also. So because of that, they are purchasing from other businesses. They're not purchasing, okay, they have an individual that's down the street that they purchase their products from. No, they're usually purchasing from another business to be able to provide whatever they need to their students, whether it's the supplies that they use, the office supplies, like they may go to Staples, whether it's the food that they serve in the cafeteria. There's lots of ways that we can think about how businesses are providing products and services to schools, to hospitals, and to other institutions. So those are our categories of organizational buyers. In our book, we talk about the model of the organizational buying process. First, we're going to talk about these different purchase type influences, structural influences, and behavioral influences. These are things that influence the buying process. And then we'll talk about this buying process as it relates to our overall idea of this organizational buying process. So let's go ahead and jump in. First, we'll talk about purchase type influences, and there's some common types of B2B purchases. We have the straight rebuy, which is you routinely order the same thing from your supplier, and this is pretty common. This is probably one of the most common ways that we as businesses make purchases, and that's because most businesses are on a routine basis, right? You can think of a restaurant, they know how much they're selling of a certain product, and so they can go and they can say, okay, well, we're pretty much needing the same thing that we needed last week. Go ahead and place the order because the thing about it is, if you're tracking all these things, you have a pretty well set idea of your really strong performing items versus your lower performing items, and how much you're going through each day, because oftentimes you have the technology that tracks it, or even you're just keeping a very good record of how much product you're using and how much product you need. And so with the straight rebuy, usually you're buying those same products, often at times at the same quantity that you would every week, or on a regular basis. So straight rebuy is very common, especially for those inventory that is perishable, so you need it just in time, and you're trying to get that inventory out. So this could be even with non-perishable products, just that you don't want to keep a lot of inventory on hand, and so you need it just in time for you to be able to deliver that product or service to your client. We also have modified rebuy, and these are potential alternatives that you might consider before making your decision. This may be like you have a sales representative that with the wholesaler that you work with, they come to you and they say, oh, well, I have this great product on hand that I just got. How about I give you like a sample to try, and maybe you buy a case and see how you like it. So you could be presented with an alternative decision by your salesperson, and they might convince you to try a different product for that week or for that particular instance in time. Now this can easily happen because if you have a sales representative for your wholesaler that comes in, you may want to try something and put something like on the menu as like a special for that week. And so modified rebuy can easily happen. And then obviously we have new task purchases, which the individual or individuals going through that purchase process, they may go through an extensive search for information and make a formal decision. So oftentimes this is like with big ticket purchases that is going to affect the whole entire organization. So with these big ticket items, they obviously, a lot of time needs to go into making that decision rather than just saying, okay, yeah, we like it, go for it. This could be like purchasing of a new office building. This could be like I had mentioned, Texas Tech potentially purchasing Adobe products for the whole university. If they were to do that, they would go through an extensive information search to see if that's even necessary. So new task purchases are really important because obviously companies, they have to go through new task purchases if they want to grow, and if they want to continue being in business, they oftentimes have these big ticket purchases. We also have structural influences that affect the buying process. These are through the purchasing roles that exist within the organization. We have initiators, users, influencers, buyers, deciders, and we have gatekeepers. So all of these different roles within the organization can affect the buying process. Oftentimes, like gatekeepers, they are really controlling that flow of information, who knows what and what they know. And then you have the users, whoever's going to be using that product. So oftentimes you can think of this like in management, they may make a decision for using a particular product or a particular technology within the firm, but they may not be the actual end user. It may be like a sales manager requires their salespeople to use a new technology. Well, you have to be cognizant of, okay, whoever's using it should actually be able to be trained on it, be able to understand it, and it actually be useful to those who are using it. You also have those that are influencing the buying process. You have the initiators, those who start the buying process, and then you have the formal buyers, which buyers are very common in a lot of companies, especially for companies that sell a product. And that's because, like, the thing is, they're having to source products from other vendors oftentimes. So you can think of this like at Walmart, they have formal buyers for particular categories. So we can think of, let's go with the electronics category, that there is a specific buyer that focuses on the electronics category and sourcing different electronics to be placed in the Walmart stores, because Walmart doesn't manufacture a lot of their own products. So the same can be said about like Academy. They have buyers within each of their categories. So let's say like the shoes category, men's shoes, that they have a buyer that focuses on sourcing men's shoes from different vendors to be included in Academy. So buyers are very common, and these buyers have the formal authority to select a supplier and negotiate terms. We also have organization-specific factors, and these depend on what type of orientation, if it's production, product orientation, a stakeholder orientation, or we have a marketing orientation. And marketing is really the key for us, is because we're focused on customer needs and wants within a marketing orientation. So with that, what type of orientation the company has really can make a big difference on how the buying process works. It can also be affected by different types of decision making. We can have joint decision making that is more common in larger organizations, but less common in smaller organizations. And then also based off the degree of centralization, if it's decentralized, meaning that it's a flat organization, there is typically more joint decision making. However, if it's centralized, like we're pretty well common that or familiar with, is like you have a CEO at the top, then you have other members of the C-suite, and then you have other people below that. Oftentimes the decision making is less, joint decision making is less common, because most of the decision making is occurring at the top with the CEO or even members of the chief executive suite. So with that, that gives you kind of a contrast between how joint decision making occurs within the organization, whether it occurs more often for these types of organization and less common for others. We also can have influences based off of policies and procedures. So who has the buying responsibility? If we're only sourcing from a single supplier, and whenever we do source from a single supplier, the efficiencies that are gained from that, the simplicity that can occur through that purchase process, and you develop those long-term relationships with that supplier. So sole sourcing is kind of common in a lot of organizations, and that's just because it makes it easier. Oftentimes the sole sourcing is happens due to the fact that there may be limited suppliers available to provide the products and services that you need. Other times you may have to have competitive bids, and these may be for like very large purchases or complex purchases. And so competitive bids are very common, especially with government entities. And with this, you often have several organizational members participating and a criteria to provide a rating of how you're going through this bid process. The last influence that we have is behavioral influences. And with behavioral influences, this can occur through a lot of ways, but we see personal and role factors the most common. With personal factors, this relates to the individual involved in the purchase decision. So what position that individual has, how long they've been at the company, and what level they're at in the organization. Are they the chief executive officer? Are they the chief marketing officer? Or are they just like a sales manager or salesperson? So what level you are in the organization matters. What types of relationships that individual has with their peers, and then also just individual motives, your personality, your credibility, all of those things have a role to play. We also have role factors, which actually are more related to their role within the organization. So what role that individual has. So if there's a salesperson, that matters. So what perceptions they have about their role as a salesperson, the expectations of what a salesperson should do, tensions and stress associated with being a salesperson, any type of conflict associated with that role, and any uncertainty about what that role entails. So these role factors are very important because oftentimes within an organization, especially marketing managers, they have sometimes uncertainty associated with what type of things the marketing manager should be doing. Sometimes at the top of the organization, they may give a lot of responsibility to a marketing manager, but then they're not able to execute those responsibilities that effectively because there's some role conflict and ambiguity. So that can affect the buying process. And then we also have commitment from employees that also plays a role. So now that we've gone through those influences, we can talk about the organizational buying process. We have different stages in the organizational buying process. We have the need, which we've talked about, is similar to the customer or the consumer purchase process, where customers have to identify a need. In the same way, businesses have to identify that there's some type of need by the organization. And so once they've identified that need, they can do a vendor analysis. And so you could rate your potential suppliers on various metrics. This is a vendor form here that we could evaluate based off of these different aspects. And some may be like major aspects would be like quality, price, their delivery. So if they're available to deliver, let's say they need the products at 4 o'clock in the morning. Are they available to get my products to me at that time? And then also the technology that the company offers to be able to make the purchase process easier. Because oftentimes, like I said, that straight rebuy is very common. And with that, they have to have some aspect that makes that purchase process, maybe like automated reordering, that makes it a lot easier than having to call up your salesperson every time and say, I need this, this, and this. So there's this vendor analysis that could occur whenever you're going through that organizational buying process, that you're actually rating them on this, on like a sheet of paper and a spreadsheet to make a comparison between vendors. We also have purchase activities. With that comes negotiation and contracts very often, especially for those larger purchases, right? The idea here is that when they're negotiating, the buyer, obviously they need their product, but the seller needs to sell that product or service just as much as the buyer needs it, because the way that the seller makes money is by selling that product or service. So if they're not selling their products, if they're not selling their services because maybe they're priced too high, then they're not making any money. So it's really, this key here is that both the buyer and the seller, they both need, they have skin in the game, essentially, that they're working to ensure that while one is benefiting from the products or services from this company, the company that's selling the products and service is able to stay in business and continue operating by getting money for the products or services that they're providing. We also have the post-purchase evaluation, and with that comes an an evaluation of the product or service. And this often happens at the time of delivery or at the time of service. You have to inspect that. So we can see like up here, they have like a clipboard to sign off to say, okay, yeah, the boxes that we received, there's no damage. And we're probably familiar with this if we've ever received a large purchase that we have to sign off for, because they need to say, okay, you've looked at that product, you've looked at the packaging, it's not damaged, and say, okay, it's good to go. And sometimes with this, criteria may be different between different departments. So if you think about like a hotel, there's several different departments within a hotel. One may require some criteria for evaluating the products that they receive, like the food and beverage may require one thing, whereas if you're thinking of like the maintenance department may evaluate their deliveries in a very different way. So how that criteria looks is very different between different departments. And finally, what we'll talk about, we've talked about kind of like the big picture of B2B marketing and strategy. However, we can talk about some different tactics that are used in B2B marketing. One is email marketing, and businesses, they say that 93% of businesses use email marketing for attracting or targeting other businesses. Also, other businesses use newsletters. That's very common. 83% use it to target other business customers. And then finally, content marketing. And content marketing is like blog posts to attract other clients or business customers. So this is a nice distinguishing characteristic of the buyer's journey, and it contrasts B2C versus B2B. With this, we can see that to attract business-to-business customers, we may have checklists, white papers, or industry reports that our business provides to maybe a potential client. Whereas for regular customers, consumers, this may be through blog posts, infographics, or viral content. Now, to get them to consider our offer that we have in the business-to-business side, this may be through a webinar or a case study. However, on the consumer side, this may be through a video or even a buyer's guide. For the B2B side, for conversion, actually getting the customer to purchase our product, we may be able to do this through providing an ROI calculator, so what type of return on investment a company would receive if they used our products or services versus others, and then other testimonials that provide credibility to the products and services we provide. On the consumer side, this may be through like a product demo or even the reviews that are very common nowadays that we can look like on Amazon or on Yelp. Reviews help us make a decision. The product demos are also common. Those are like, we've probably seen that at Market Street or at Sam's Club. So this is a nice distinguisher to help us understand the different types of tactics that businesses use to attract other businesses and businesses use to attract consumers. So that's it for our lesson on B2B marketing. It is quite a bit of information, but if you have any questions about business-to-business marketing and strategy, please email me at kt.manus@ttu.edu. Thank you.